After years of incarceration, a heavily inked convict, known simply as the driver, paces his cell awaiting his freedom. Ignoring a prison official's offer of future assistance by casually discarding his business card, the ex-convict immediately begins his long trek down the highway. His destination is a remote junkyard where his sleek Chevelle muscle car has been preserved. Retrieving the keys stashed beneath the tire, he uncovers the vehicle and speeds off. Inside, he finds a revolver and an intelligence dossier hidden in the glove compartment. Disregarding traffic laws entirely, he abandons his vehicle in oncoming traffic and storms into an office building. He locates his target and, without a moment's hesitation, executes the employee in broad daylight, entirely unbothered by the surveillance cameras recording his every move. Concurrently, a grizzled, drug-dependent cop secures narcotics from a roadside motel dealer before arriving at the office crime scene. His presence is met with visible disdain by his new partner, Detective Cicero, who aggressively extinguishes her cigarette in his coffee. Despite their palpable friction, the mismatched duo is tasked with investigating the brazen assassination. The driver visits a small, illicit office to uncover the identities of the remaining culprits responsible for his brother's demise. The informant, attempting to extort the ex-convict due to inflation, signals his bodyguard, a formidable Samoan MMA champion, to intimidate him. However, the moment the fighter recognizes the driver's menacing tattoos, he flees in sheer panic. Suitably terrified, the informant surrenders the required intel and hastily offers a cash bribe to pacify the lethal ex-convict. A new adversary, the killer, is introduced into the fray. Living in opulence with a stunning partner, this eccentric hitman possesses a deep obsession with self-improvement and aesthetics. His routine: he engages in intense, breakdance-infused yoga routines and attends regular therapy sessions under the guise of being a surgeon. Shortly after expressing a craving for a more extreme challenge, he receives a lucrative contract to eliminate the driver. Armed and enthusiastic, he begins tracking his prey. As Detective Cicero investigates, she discovers the driver was incarcerated a decade prior, following a flawlessly executed bank heist. A grim flashback reveals the catalyst for his unrelenting vengeance. Following the heist, the driver and his younger brother were ambushed by a rival syndicate. Coerced by threats to his brother's life, the driver surrendered the location of the stolen money. Tragically, the captors slit his brother's throat regardless. The driver was shot in the head but miraculously survived. His shattered skull was reconstructed with a metal plate, cementing his vow for retribution. The driver tracks down an elderly, predatory filmmaker who had recorded his brother's execution. After dispensing swift justice and fatally shooting the old man, the driver is ambushed in the hallway by the killer. Their sudden firefight is momentarily interrupted by a wandering child, allowing the driver to suppress his opponent and make a swift vehicular escape. Meanwhile, the cop's personal life unravels as he abandons his resentful son at a baseball game to attend the fresh crime scene, feigning devotion while prioritizing his chaotic job. Back at his hotel, the killer recounts the skirmish to his partner. Rather than feeling defeated, he is deeply impressed by the driver's calculated ruthlessness and lack of hesitation. Invigorated by this formidable challenge, he spontaneously proposes to his girlfriend over the phone, to which she joyfully agrees. Simultaneously, Detective Cicero digs into the cop's background. She unearths a dark history of misconduct during his tenure in the Los Angeles Homicide Division, further discovering that his ex-wife was not a fellow officer, but formerly his confidential informant. The cop's denial. Noticing his partner's judgmental glare, the cop casually dismissed her concerns. He insisted his troubled history was firmly in the past, falsely claiming he had completely overcome his chemical dependency the moment his son was born. Elsewhere, the driver staked out his next target, a woman he observed sending her son off for the day. Armed and ready, he infiltrated her home, only to be struck by a devastating realization. The woman was his ex-girlfriend. Having forbidden her from visiting him during his decade-long incarceration, he had assumed the boy he just saw was his own. He was painfully mistaken. She had terminated the pregnancy years ago and built a new life without him. Shattered by the revelation that the child he fought to return to never existed, he silently retreated to his violent mission, leaving behind his ex, who surprisingly wished him luck. In stark contrast, the killer was celebrating a bizarre, extravagant wedding with his partner, Lily. Forgoing tradition, the couple celebrated their union by using handguns for target practice. Now officially married, the eccentric assassin promised Lily they would relocate to Pasadena and that he would permanently retire from contract killing. Desperate to reconcile with his ex-wife, Marina, the cop forced his way into her home. Seeing she was closely following his high-profile case, he begged for a fresh start. Marina, having built a stable life for herself and their son, vehemently refused. In a final, desperate plea, the cop surrendered his hidden supply of illicit narcotics to her. He promised to formally admit himself into an inpatient addiction recovery center, but under one condition: he needed one final day with his family before completing his assignment. Reluctantly, Marina agreed. Meanwhile, the driver arrived at a neon-lit strip club to hunt the enforcer who had personally slit his brother's throat a decade prior. The duel tracking the enforcer to the restroom, the driver dismissed an elderly doorman to ensure no collateral damage. A brutal knife fight ensued. The driver methodically dismantled his opponent until the enforcer collapsed. The final request. With his dying breath, the enforcer begged the driver to call his son and apologize on his behalf. The driver left him to bleed out, sat in his car, and honored the dying man's request by making the phone call. The narrative accelerates as all three men face the consequences of their paths. The killer, plagued by memories of his childhood physical deformities, frantically cleaned his weapons. Despite Lily's pleas to abandon the contract, he refused to leave the job unfinished. Simultaneously, the cop awoke next to his son, who confessed his hatred for baseball. Finding Marina deeply distressed over their toxic cycle, the cop finally relented. He discarded his residual narcotics into the trash and returned to sleep. The next morning, Detective Cicero uncovered a massive breakthrough. All of the driver's victims were former police informants tied to his brother's murder. News broke that the enforcer from the strip club had miraculously survived and was hospitalized. This triggered a frantic race. The driver breached the hospital, executing the enforcer mid-surgery with a shot to the head. The cop pursued the driver into the basement, losing a brief gunfight. Inexplicably, the driver spared the cop's life and vanished. The killer intercepted the driver on the highway. Following a high-speed pursuit, the driver disabled the killer's vehicle. Despite his employer suddenly canceling the contract, the killer's bruised ego demanded he finish the hunt. Seeking refuge, the driver visited his mother. As she sutured his gunshot wound, he confessed that the fateful bank heist was never about greed. It was a desperate bid to pay off his late brother's debts. Armed with his brother's ashes, he departed for his final target. At the precinct, Cicero handed the cop a list of the remaining targets, all low-level informants. The cop volunteered to intercept the driver. The driver tracked his final target to a tent revival. The target, now a traveling preacher, confessed his regret over the robbery and explained he had found faith in prison. Seeing the preacher's adopted family, the driver chose mercy, firing his weapon into the dirt and walking away. The climax in the tent. Waiting inside the church tent was the killer, demanding a fair duel. The driver refused, psychoanalyzing the assassin's deep-seated insecurities. Suddenly, the cop entered, forcing the killer to drop his weapon. The truth was finally exposed. The cop was the mastermind and the contractor who ordered the hit on the driver. 10 years ago, the driver's brother's girlfriend was the cop's confidential informant in Los Angeles. The cop orchestrated the ambush, using his network of informants to steal the crew's heist money. The cop realized he was safe from the driver's list because the driver never knew he existed, a fact confirmed when the driver spared him in the hospital basement. Insulted by the cop's attempt to pay him for an incomplete job and reminding him he only charges $1 as a hobby, the killer formally retired and walked away. Believing he had won, the cop called Marina, expressing profound relief that they could finally start over. His victory was cut short by a fatal gunshot to the back. The driver, having survived the cop's earlier ambush thanks to the metal plate in his skull, executed the corrupt officer. Detective Cicero arrived at the scene, deduced her partner's immense corruption, but chose to bury the truth to preserve his family's peace. The driver scattered his brother's ashes over a reservoir, finally driving off into the horizon as the preacher's voice echoed a sermon on forgiveness. Make sure to subscribe and turn on your notification to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.